Something that good readers do is that they are able to identify the structure of a text while they read. Most writing follows set patterns or organizational structures. We'll explore 5 of the most common organizational patterns and talk about how to recognize each when you encounter them in reading. In this video, we'll discuss list of items and time order. Pause the video and read through this short passage. What did you notice about the structure of this paragraph? If you came up with a list of things to do to prepare against a disaster, you were right. The structure is sometimes called list of items. There were a few clues that this passage had a list of items structure. First, it tells you that there are 2 things families can do to prepare for a disaster. This is your clue that the paragraph is going to list 2 things. Another clue that is used is the transition words to set off each of these items in the list. Transition words are used by writers to help you move from one point to the next in the writing. In this passage, the author uses the very common transition words of first and second to let us know that this is a list and that there is the first item in the list and then there's the second item in the list. Some important things to keep in mind when you're dealing with a list of items structure. As I've already said, oftentimes the author will let you know directly in the writing that they're going to be a certain number of things to support the main idea. So the author will just tell you right out that this is a list of structure, or a list structure. Further, authors will typically use transition words that will kind of help you know that you're dealing with a list. However, the most important piece is the actual list itself. To be a list of items, and not some other organizational pattern that we'll talk about, the items list could be listed in any order. It doesn't matter. For example, in this passage, we could have put the second item, Family Emergency Plan, first, and the Emergency Supply Kit second, and it wouldn't have changed the meaning of this paragraph. That's how I know that I have a list of items structure. The reason that a list of items structure is so important when we read to be able to identify that is once you see in the main idea that there's going to be 3 things, those 3 things are the most important components that we need to recall and remember. And so understanding that you're dealing with a list of items structure helps you be able to study and get better comprehension from your reading. Pause the video and read this paragraph with a list of items structure. See if the author tells you a number and if the author uses transition words to help set up the list. If the order of the list can be reversed without changing the meaning of the paragraph. Okay, let's walk through this paragraph. The easiest way for me to kind of find the structure of a paragraph is to first find the main idea of the whole thing. So I find that in the first sentence. The author tells me that there's going to be 3 things later on in the second sentence. So I know that he's going to talk about 3 things. Now this particular passage is an introductory paragraph of a section, so I can infer that the author is probably going to go through and write a paragraph for each one of these listed items down below this introductory paragraph. The last thing that I need to look for, another thing about this particular paragraph is the author doesn't really use any transition words. Instead, the author is using numbers, which are substitutes for our transition words. So I can easily scan and see 1, 2, 3, and know that I'm dealing with a list of numbers, or a list of items. But the important thing is that last critical component. Can this list of items be moved around and changed? In this particular passage, it could. You could have be informed about different types of emergencies first and making a family emergency plan last, and it doesn't alter the meaning or the sequencing of the paragraph. Another pattern that we're going to explore in this video is time order. This pattern is similar to the list of items in the fact that the author is using the structure using the structure are going to give you a list of steps or stages or chronological events. But it differs from a list of items in the fact that the order now does matter, and that if we move things around, it's not going to make sense anymore. Go ahead and pause the video and read the following example. The author lets me know that this is going to be a list of instructions in that very first sentence. The author also uses transition words to help offset and show me progress, show me where the transitions are going to happen, and kind of outline each key supporting detail, which is a step in this particular process. So I have next, or first, next, the third, the next step, the final step. So I can see that there's a sequence that's going on, and that the sequence has a particular order to it. So far, this is fairly similar to a list of items, as it gives me a list of steps, but that last component comes into play here. I can't move any of the steps around. I can't take the final step and put it at the beginning, because then it wouldn't make sense anymore. I can't take the first step and put it in the middle, because then the whole meaning of the paragraph is changed. So it becomes very important to make sure that the order, to determine between a time order and a list of items, is that last component as to whether the order can be moved around without affecting the meaning, or if it can't. Time order is most common when dealing with historical events. Another common area that you see this pattern used heavily in is in instructions or concepts that are in stages, phases, or cycles. So that would be the water cycle, or the convection cycle, or the stages of mitosis. All of those things would probably follow this time order sequence, because those processes or those events need to happen either chronologically or in a specific order. So pause the video and read this short passage. What makes this a time order structure, and is it either event driven or is it stage driven? As you were reading, I hoped you noticed that instead of transition words, the author uses dates to help drive the paragraph forward. This would be an example of an event-driven time order structure. In other words, you had to have the bombing of Pearl Harbor first before you have the president declare war. And so that's why you have those two dates. Is it showing you this happens on December 7th, this happened on December 8th. The chronological order is necessary in order for you to gain meaning and understanding from this paragraph. Pause the video now and read this short paragraph, trying to determine if it's a time order pattern, and then also, is it an event-driven or a stage-driven? Now, this particular text is much more complex than the previous one, because it lacks, really easy keywords to help you see its structure. The author only uses one transition word and kind of another power word in the sentence, or in this paragraph. One thing to be mindful of, though, is the very first sentence tells us that the scientific method is an ongoing process. That should be our big ding, 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 ding. The scientific method is going to be a method, and it's a process, so more than likely I'm going to be dealing with time order. However, he does give us a transition word of begins to kind of help us know where the process is going to begin at, and then he helps us with lead to kind of help us see that we're progressing through steps as we go through this particular method. If we go through each sentence, we can see that the process is fairly well outlined. The method begins with observation. So we see that's the first step, which makes us, next sentence, question. And those questions drive us to make a hypothesis and then a prediction that we're going to try and test. As we're doing this testing of our prediction, we gather information or evidence to either prove we were right or we were wrong. And based upon what we find, we either refine our hypothesis and predictions and continue to test and expand what we understand, or reject them, or it will evolve into a general theory that will help us understand whatever it was we were questioning and hypothesizing about. These two types of patterns, list of items and time order, occur very frequently in what we read, especially in a lot of the social science material that we read, the scientific material that we read, and a lot of the social media that we're exposed to. See if you can locate an example of list of items, time order based upon an event, and time order based upon stages in your reading, just your everyday reading. In the next video, we'll cover 3 more text patterns. Until then, we'll see you later.